Hello and welcome to a special interview for The Wire. As the political crisis in Pakistan deepens, we ask, are Imran Khan's days as Prime Minister of Pakistan numbered, or is that a hasty conclusion? Joining us from Lahore to explain the complex situation in his country is Pakistan's foremost journalist, the editor-in-chief of the Friday Times, Najam Sethi. Najam Sethi, in the editorial you wrote for your paper, the Friday Times, yesterday, the 25th, you said the selected Prime Minister Imran Khan is on a ventilator. So let me start with the obvious question. Do you believe Imran Khan is going to lose the vote of confidence, or is that still too early to say?
My sense is that he will lose the vote of no confidence. He's actually lost it already on the street and in the popular imagination. His allies have almost deserted him. They just got to make the announcement, but they've made it known that they're leaving him and they're joining the opposition. And if that happens in the next 3 or 4 days, then he will lose his majority. A number of his own members of parliament have revolted. He's trying to threaten them and blackmail them, and he's gone to the Supreme Court to ask for their disqualification for life in the event that they should cross the floor. But it's so far, nothing has happened in his own favor. And on Monday, the vote of no confidence resolution will be moved in Parliament. And within the next 7 days, it has to come to a head. So unless he pulls a rabbit out of the hat in the sense of either getting his allies to come back to him by giving them various inducements, or threatening his members of parliament that if you cross the floor, there's a judgment now that says that you will be disqualified for life, which incidentally doesn't exist in any parliamentary system in the world. You can be de-seated, but for that particular moment, but not disqualified.
You've raised many issues there. For the sake of an Indian audience that's not as conversant with the situation in your country as you are, let me take them up one by one. First of all, the National Assembly convened yesterday, Friday the 25th. The Speaker immediately adjourned it to the afternoon of Monday the 28th. Is the Speaker trying to find ways to drag things out? And secondly, do we have a firm date when the actual voting will happen?
Well, the Speaker has been trying to delay matters. There's no doubt about that. That is the public perception as well. The Constitution is very clear. As soon as the opposition lodges a vote, a notice to the Parliament Secretary, the National Assembly Speaker, he's obliged to call a session within 14 days to determine how to move forward. And in this case, he's taken more than 14 days on various excuses. One excuse being that the National Assembly Hall is not available because some conferences are being held and so on and so forth. A pretty feeble excuse. So he's already delayed matters beyond the stipulated period in the Constitution. And then following up, there is another clause that says that once a resolution is moved, you have to wrap it up in 7 days. And he's also delayed moving that resolution by 3 days. Now it's set to be moved on Monday. And there's no knowing what he will do on Monday, whether the clock will start ticking for the 7 days after Monday, whether he will include the holidays in that or not, or whether he'll decide that the holidays are to be excluded and the 7 days becomes 9 days or 10 days and so on. So there is every apprehension of further delays.
Now, is there a possibility that actually the vote of confidence may not be held at all, either because the Speaker comes up with a series of disputed decisions and resolutions, which then get referred to the Supreme Court for clarification, and that takes time, or because the army, which is neutral, puts pressure on both sides to have an early election, something in the next 2-3 months, which has also, in a sense, been hinted at by your Interior Minister, Sheikh Rashid?
Well, to answer your second question first, before I lose track of it, right now the army is trying not to meddle in the internal affairs of these political parties. That's a very rare situation. In the past, it has always taken sides, one way or the other. But this time around, it's trying not to take sides because it's been discredited hugely by Imran Khan's lack of performance and the fact that they brought him to power. So they're stepping back from him, but they're not overtly going over to the other side. Because they'd like to redeem their reputation. So this whole notion of neutrality has just cropped up. Having said that, I don't think the army is interested in an early election. They'd rather there was stability in the country, that they would rather that even if there was a change in government, the next government should last for the next 1.5 years before the general elections are formally due. But I don't think they will interfere in the process now. It will all depend on whether the vote of confidence succeeds or not, and if it does, how long the next government will want to stay. The main party, the Muslim League, Nawaz, is keen on staying no more than a month or two and then holding elections. Their argument is that if you stay for the full term, which is the balance of the full term, which is like a year and a half, you're going to get discredited because you won't be able to follow through on any tough measures you take, and then you'll be, the people will turn against you. So they'd rather have a full stint of 5 years, take hard decisions in the early years, and then try and get some positivity going in the later years. So there are all these issues. My sense is the army will stay out of this mess, as it were, which has now been created by the inability of Imran Khan to deliver, and his victimization of the opposition, and the dismal state of the economy.
What about the possibility that the speaker may try and clear the pitch with disputed decisions that need to be referred to courts for clarification? Is that a likelihood?
That is a very distinct likelihood. We already have seen indications that there is an agreement, an implicit understanding between the president of Pakistan, who's a Imran Khan nominee and a loyalist, and the speaker, who's not neutral at all. He's again a loyalist of Imran Khan, the prime minister himself, in collusion together. One attempt to disrupt these no confidence proceedings has been hurriedly called lodged presidential reference before the Supreme Court, which basically says asking the Supreme Court in its advisory jurisdiction to let it know whether or not the speaker disqualify a member of parliament who's crossing the floor and disqualify him for life, whether or not the constitution will accept that or not. And so now the judges are sitting on a daily basis in the Supreme Court, a 5-member bench, trying to determine whether or not the word in the constitution is de-seat when you cross the floor. Whether or not de-seating implies that you've crossed the floor, you've not been a good Muslim. Not only are you de-seated, but you're disqualified, and you're disqualified for life under some constitutional clauses that are relevant in this, or maybe seen to be relevant in this section. So there is an ongoing Supreme Court case that would impinge on what happens in the vote of no confidence.
Let's then, at this point, come to the precise position, as far as we can make it out, facing Imran Khan. It's widely reported, and you referred to this yourself a moment ago, that perhaps up to 20 of his own legislators, you call them MNAs, are likely to vote against him. It's also widely reported that 3 of his critical allies, the Muttahida Qawmi movement, the Pakistan Muslim League Care, and the Balochistan Awami Party, which together have 17 members, may also vote against him. But is it more or less certain that these people will vote against him, or is this still in the realm of speculation and questioning?
Well, the situation is that these people have indicated in so many ways that they have parted ways with Imran, and they're stitching up agreements with the opposition, all 3 of them. However, Imran Khan is making a last-ditch effort to woo them. And right now, as we speak, ministers from the federal government are sitting with the allies and offering them all sorts of inducements not to desert. And the argument the allies have given is that you've not given us anything in the last 3.5, 4 years. Why should we believe you now when you're in trouble and you're offering up governorships and ministries and so on and so forth? So yes, he's making a last-ditch effort. My sense is it will not succeed. The reason why I say that is that if the army stays neutral, and if there's no pressure on the army for the allies to go back to Imran Khan, they will desert him now, because they think that to contest an election, if you're a member of Imran Khan's party, sooner or later is a disaster, because right now he's very electorally unpopular. He's trying to demonstrate his popularity by holding rallies. But the fact is that right now, given the way the recent by-elections and other local elections have yielded results, they're all anti-PTI, anti the Imran Khan party, and they're all pro-opposition. So my sense is, yes, right now there is speculation of whether or not they will stick to their guns and join the opposition, and Imran Khan is wooing them. My own sense is they will depart, they will leave him, and they will join hands with the opposition to dethrone him.
For the sake of the Indian audience, I'll point out that what underlies your answer is that Imran Khan's position is particularly powerless. To be able to survive, he needs to ensure that the 20 of his own MNAs do not vote against him. He also needs to ensure that the 17 allies, i.e., together those three constitute 17 seats, also don't vote against him. If just one lot go away, he's lost. He has to keep both on
You're
side. Isn't that right?
you're you're absolutely right. The magic number is 172, which is half the members of the parliament, which is what is required to for a vote of no confidence to succeed, or for a vote of confidence to succeed in the establishment of a new government. The opposition has already got 162. That is their combined strength. If they get another 12, they're well past the one. They're past 172. They'll be 174. And if those are Imran Khan's losses, which they will be, then he will not have a majority. So, the thing is, if 10 or 12 or 15 of the allies leave Imran Khan, regardless of whether his own members cross the floor or not, he's gone. And if the allies stick with him and his own members cross the floor, they may be deseated but not disqualified. If deseating means their vote will be counted, in that case too, he will be gone.
Absolutely. Therefore, it's quite clear that the cards are stacked against Imran Khan as we speak today, Saturday. In which case, let's look at what's gone wrong for him. I presume that the army and the army chief in particular are disillusioned. They've decided to stay neutral, which means they've distanced themselves from the government that they put in place roughly 3.5 years ago. The question is why? Was it entirely to do with the standoff over the appointment of the new ISI chief, which happened towards the end of last year? Or are there other reasons that have also spoiled the relationship between General Bajwa and the army and Imran and his party?
The root cause of the problem lies in Imran's inability to deliver the agenda that the army had put together for him. They brought him in, and they said to him, okay, now you have to deliver. We are going to help you deliver, and we'll stand by you. And for 3 years, we heard nothing other than we are on the same page. The army chief saying we are on the same page as the prime minister saying much the same thing. But then when his performance began to go bad, when people began to get angry, when inflation hit everybody's pockets, when there was instability and uncertainty, people began to get disillusioned. They began to attack Imran Khan first, and then they suddenly woke up to the fact that he'd been. So then, with a little bit of nudging and winking from the opposition, the discontent turned against the military. And this discontent is particularly noticeable in Punjab province, which is over 100 million people. Over half the members of parliament come from Punjab, and 70% of the Pakistan army comes from Punjab, rank and file. So suddenly the army's constituency began to get restless, and they began to criticize the army for having brought in this gentleman and sticking with him. That's when it became uncomfortable for them. So they went to Imran and they said, hey, you got to change the chief minister of Punjab. He's a disaster. And there are massive corruption stories going around, and we have evidence of all this. Imran said, sorry, I'm not going to do it. And then it went on from one thing to another. Foreign policy. The army wanted to go back to good relations with India, at least start trading with India. Imran said no. He was on a populist binge. They said we have to reset our relationship with the United States and the West because we trade with them and we take loans from them, and the IMF is here, and so on and so forth. And Imran was on a populist binge saying, no, I won't. I'm so the classic populism resort to nationalism, religion, and populism, and anti-Americanism and anti-imperialism, that sort of agenda he was on. And at the same time, he wasn't delivering. So one thing led to another until such time that the army said to him, look, we can't be seen to be helping you like this. We're stepping back. The one other issue came up, and quickly, and that was that the man who was actually helping Imran Khan, who helped him come to power and propped him up continuously and kept the opposition at bay and under pressure, was the then DGISI, General Faiz Hamid. And the army then turned around and said, okay, we need to get a new DGISI who's not going to be so politically inclined towards Imran. And his own ambitions were coming in the way. He hoped to be the next army chief, and he hoped Imran would appoint him as such. So they went to him and they said, it's time to change the ISI chief. And he did that. He dragged his feet. Now, under the constitution, the prime minister appoints the army chief, and he removes him or shunts him. So Imran did it, and then I think that was the breaking point when the army higher hierarchy got together and said, "Look, this is not on. He's interfering in our internal affairs. He's using us as a prop, and he's using one of us to bypass the most senior generals, and so on and so forth." And I think they finally got him to shift. But by that time, divisions had already been established.
You've established very clearly for an Indian audience the multiple reasons why the army has become disillusioned with Imran Khan, and how, in fact, to protect their own image, particularly in Punjab, they need to distance themselves from a government which they may have brought into being, but which is now discredited. But tell me something else. What about Imran standing with the people of Pakistan? Has that also collapsed? And I presume it has, because 20 of his own MNAs want to vote against him. His allies also are not supporting him. And I take it that's a reflection of the fact that they've realized that Imran is unpopular. Sticking with Imran will also pull us down. How much of that nationwide unpopularity is to do with Imran's handling of the economy?
Let me put it like this. Imran is not unpopular, but he's not popular with a larger section of society. He still has a core constituency. It's an urban middle class that likes the idea of a leader like Imran Khan and responds to his populist rhetoric. So he still has a constituency. But the problem is that in this first past the post system, it doesn't matter whether you have 3 million people supporting you. What matters is that there are 3.2 million people who are supporting the other side, who can still, with hardly a bigger majority, win more seats in parliament. You may get seats, your opponent may get 55,000 seats, you get in, and the other person is a nobody. So in this perspective, his electoral prospects are not bright, but his popularity in the middle classes is still going strong, and which is what he's trying to now exploit. The MNAs, the members of parliament, who are now thinking of the next election, which in the worst case scenario could be next year, but in the best case scenario, from their point of view, could be 3 months from now or 4 months from now. They know they won't be able to win a seat on a PTI ticket now. They also know that without help from the ISI, which is what many of them had last time around, they are going to be in a poor position. And Nawaz Sharif's popularity in Punjab has surged, the party's popularity. So in purely personal terms, Imran Khan has charisma, is popular with a large section of society, but that is not enough to win him an election, given the way the elections are conducted in this country. And I think that's what the members of parliament are thinking, that he may be popular, but we've got to stake our chances on winning our seats next time around. And a PTI ticket is certainly not going to be a ticket to parliament.
Now, Najam Sethi, in an editorial you wrote for your paper, The Friday Times, on the 18th of March, which is just 9 days ago, you also suggested that there are problems within the government itself, in the sense that the Prime Minister's principal secretary, you said, is planning to part company with Imran Khan. You added that, in fact, a number of special assistants, advisors, and ministers are readying to flee. Does that suggest that even within his own close party and his own bureaucrats and civil servants, there's a sense of meltdown taking place?
Absolutely. There are 3 dimensions to Imran Khan's government. The first is the bureaucracy. The bureaucracy, of course, is never loyal to anyone. They serve at the pleasure of someone, and when they realize that that person may be on his way out, they tend to shift their loyalties. So the bureaucracy is one section, and the Prime Minister's secretary, the principal secretary to the Prime Minister, has been with him all these years, and now all of a sudden, in these troubled circumstances, he has connived to get a posting to the World Bank. Now that posting takes effect in October, but he's already got the document signed and the notification issued, which is to suggest that he's already thinking of leaving the ship and is biding his time, and is making sure that in case there is a change of government, he will still be able to get out and go to the World Bank as Pakistan's nominee. There is this procedure that happens every 4 years or so. So yes, and then there's a second part of Imran Khan's government, are the people who fled from their own parties or were nudged into joining him by his mentors in the military establishment at that time, who really have no loyalties to him or to his policies, but thought that, well, this is the one way to get into parliament. So they have no loyalties to him. They're not even ideologues of any sort. They're people who constantly flock from one party to another, depending on their prospects. And so that too is somebody that he can't rely on, that section of society. And then there are the ideologues, the young lots, the people who believe in him and will stand by him. But unfortunately, as it so happens, they're not in a majority. Most of his members of parliament, or at least half of them, come from the other side, the lotas, as we call them, the people who constantly change loyalties and so on. So, in terms of his own government too, and his close cronies who were once part of his entourage and his government, many close friends have left him, or they've been kicked out by him because he couldn't get along with them. And they're also milling around either with the opposition or sulking in some corner or the other, and occasionally leaking stories about his malafides and so on and so forth. So that is it's a complicated situation, but those loyal to him are sticking with him.
Tell me, how much of the problems that he faces today are a creation of his personality or his character or his behavior? Again, that same editorial of the 18th of March that you wrote for your paper says the following of Imran Khan: he is a deeply flawed person. The worry is that his personal failings may lead to democracy's failure in Pakistan all over again. What are these flaws you're referring to, and why would they threaten Pakistan's democracy?
Look, I mean, democracy, as we know it in our part of the world, is about compromise, is about give and take, is about alliances. Um, it's about relationships with politicians amongst themselves. There are many tribal notions involved, apart from the political ones, in stitching alliances and governments together and working people. Unfortunately, Imran doesn't subscribe to that philosophy. His own personal relationships with people are very flaky. In fact, he hardly has any personal relationship with anyone. He finds it difficult to go to people and ask for their help because he thinks he's too arrogant for that. He thinks they should come to him. Even as we speak, he doesn't think that it's, that he should get up and go and talk to other party leaders and say, hey, don't leave me now, stay with us. He's sending his minions to them. They don't like this. They think, that they are the cat's whiskers in their own rights. So he has this personal arrogance, which comes in the way of dealing with politicians. He actually doesn't think of himself as a politician. He doesn't think he needs to do the things they need to do to stitch up alliances. And then he has absolutely no sense of governance. He has no idea of how to lead a cabinet, of how to get decisions done, of how to administer, how to deliver. He has a cabinet meeting. He used to have a cabinet meeting every second, third day, and where he would just sit behind a chair and hear everybody out and take a decision, and that was it. No attempt to monitor, no attempt to administer. In a sense, pretty aloof. It's the sort of thing a dictator would want to do, that I'm above it all, I'm not accountable, I don't need to explain things to anyone. I need to hear everyone take my decision, and that's it, and everybody goes and implements that decision. So there are deep personal flaws, which when he was captain of the cricket team, he was leading 11 people. He had a cricket board that dared not offend him. And some of his relatives were in the cricket board at that time too. And he could pick and choose and say, out you go and out you come. And there was no accountability. Unfortunately, in government, there is accountability. There is a media, there is constantly people asking about performance and so on and so forth. And so therefore, just because he was part of the winning team that won the 1992 World Cup doesn't mean that he knows how to put together a team to run government. And his performance in Punjab has been abysmal. He's pulled out somebody who's a nobody from anywhere, who cannot even speak a single word of intelligent word, and he's made him the chief minister. And the only reason he's done that is because he doesn't want anybody who's able to deliver anything in Punjab to stand up as a leader and be compared to him, and so on. So he's got a weak man out there in Punjab, and Punjab is Pakistan. And you're not delivering there. So, that is the sort of problem he's had with. And people are now thinking, is he capable? He may be a popular guy, he may be a good cricket captain and so on, but is he a good prime minister? Is he able to put a team together to deliver? And there is no delivery for the last 4 years.
Now, Imran Khan keeps insisting that he has an ace up his sleeve, which is why he says he's not going to resign, and he says he will deliver this ace a day before the voting. Do you have any sense of what he's possibly hinting at?
My own sense is he's bluffing. My sense is this is his way of making sure that he has tens of thousands of people at the rally. And the reason why he's calling this rally on the eve of the vote of no confidence, and that is what the propaganda of the government is right now, which is that I'm very popular. I'm standing between good and evil. There is no such thing as neutrality. The army has to help me because I'm the good and the opposition is evil. They're all corrupt. They're all gundas. They're all immoral. This is a fight between good and evil. This is a fight between independent Pakistan and a slave Pakistan. This is a fight between Muslim Pakistan and all these guys who are not good Muslims and so on and so forth. So he's trying to build a constituency that is now based on morality, which of course, as you know, the middle class is very hot on morality issues. And but unfortunately, that doesn't work in the rural constituencies where self-interest and administration and delivery of funds and all the rest of it is very important. Now he knows he's on a weak wicket in parliament. He knows he lost the support of the military establishment. Now he's trying to put together a new framework. And the new framework is that I don't care about this or I don't care about that. I am a popular man and so on and so forth. And even if I'm thrown out, I will go back and carry on my jihad, my reform agenda, and so on and so forth. And I think this was a bluff that I have a big surprise. Originally, and I'll finish over here, originally people thought that he might take some drastic measures. Possibly at that time, there was speculation that he's angry the army chief and he might take action. And then when it was learned also that they are ready for any such eventuality. And I'll say no more than that. You can understand what it means when they say they are ready for any such eventuality. The army has never brooked interference in their internal affairs, least of all asking an army chief to go home and so on. The last time Nawaz Sharif tried to do that, they carried out a coup. And now yesterday he called a batch of his journalists to him and told them that, look, I have nothing to, there's no such thing is going to happen. I respect the army and so on and so forth. I will not do any interference. So he's put that at rest. That was the big thing that people thought he might actually have the courage to go and take the army on head on in a big rally like that and say, okay, I'll take my chances. I'll change the army chief. But I think he's now backed away from that. And so what will he do? He has nothing up his sleeve. This is a bluff that he's calling. And there's no more to it than that.
I won't put you in an invidious position by asking you to give me more details, but when you wrote on the 18th of March, which is the editorial you wrote for the Friday Times 9 days ago, you speculated, and it was only speculation, that Imran could consider what you called a presidential proclamation of emergency. You also said Imran may target and even sack General Qamar Javed Bajwa and appoint a non-controversial general to take his side and bail him up. Obviously, the army has made it very clear that if this is done, the army knows exactly how to behave, and we know what the army is saying without saying it. But were these thoughts genuinely in Imran's mind? Was he really thinking of these extreme steps just to save his own skin?
Karan, I didn't say that he could do that. I said the PTI, his supporters are going around spreading this, saying that he could do this, he could do that, and what if he does this? And, and I then rubbished this. I said he's not going to be able to do any of this. So I put forward what they were saying, and then I took a position against it, saying, look, there's no way he's going to sack the army chief. There's no way he's going to do this or he's going to do that, this presidential reference and all the rest of it. This is just a threat that his people are spreading around in order to demoralize and put them on the back foot.
And in a sense, the fact that his supporters were spreading these rather extreme threats is a sign of their desperation and weakness, isn't it?
Well, absolutely. They also got their social media trolls to start spreading these things. And in fact, some of them got carried away and started attacking the military establishment for being neutral. And then I think there was a reaction, and now they've all sort of deleted their tweets and so on.
In fact, famously, Imran himself said, probably with reference to the army being neutral, only animals are neutral.
Yes, that's interesting. I mean, when the army is with him, that's the way to go as far as he's concerned. If they become neutral, i.e. they're not helping him, then they're like animals. He then later backtracked and said, well, I didn't mean them. But, I can tell you this, that certainly the message went across loud and clear to where it mattered. And it didn't really go down well.
And his behavior and the so-called extreme speculation of his supporters has probably ensured that the army will stay solidly neutral and not do anything to help him. In other words, his behavior has perhaps dug his grave for him, if I understand you correctly.
And that is my own view. I think his calculation was that this would divide them. There would be many who would say, look, we don't want to be discredited. He's a popular guy. We did bring him in, give him another chance. I suspect that was what he was playing at. And then there were those who said, no, he's incorrigible and he's damaged us and he's continuing to damage us, and give him, he'll take a rope. It's time we step back. And I think the guys who've stepped back are in a majority. And so therefore, they're likely to stick to
Two last questions before I end. Both Imran Khan and the opposition parties are planning major rallies. They both claim these will be million-man rallies. I think Imran's is scheduled for tomorrow, Sunday, the opposition's on Monday. Is there any danger that with such a volatile political situation and so many people being deliberately brought into the capital, that the situation could spin out of control in some way?
Originally, this was a tricky situation. Imran had announced the 27th. The opposition turned around and said, we too will come on the 27th. Imran had said, we'll be in a particular place before Parliament, in a particular ground. And the opposition said, so be it, we shall also be there. And then I think, as is wont to happen in Pakistan, things began to move behind the scenes. And eventually, a petition came to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court then asked the administration and told the Islamabad administration that if something happens on that day, we'll hold you responsible, which was a way for the Islamabad administration and the government to back off. And then it was determined that, yes, Imran will have his rally on the 27th and they will have their rally on the 28th. And the rally in Islamabad on the 27th will be in a particular place, and the rally on the 28th will be in a completely different place, both in Islamabad. I suspect messages were sent to both government and opposition and elsewhere, so that everybody came in line. This, you might say, is a demonstration of the neutrality that we were talking about. They don't want any violence. They don't want the government saying to them, come to our rescue, because there are thousands of people out there protesting against us. They don't want the opposition to say the government is doing this to us, come to our rescue. They want to stay out of this. In theory, if there is a riot or if there's something like this, there is a constitutional clause that says the army and civil and the military authorities can be called in aid of civil power if there's a big disturbance somewhere or the other which the police can't handle. I think they've told him categorically that don't call us in the event of a disturbance. We don't want to be in a situation where the people and the government are at odds and you ask us to take sides. So can you sort this out? And the only way to sort it out is you have it on the 27th and they'll have it on the 28th, and at two different places, and we take it from there.
My last question, Najam Sethi, once again, I refer to that editorial of the 18th of March. You said there was speculation that once the government in Islamabad is brought down, the combined opposition might then move to bring down the government in Punjab, which is Pakistan's biggest state and most important state. You also said that people believe that the Speaker of the Punjab Assembly, Chaudhry Parvez Elahi, is believed to have switched loyalties. So if Imran goes, is there real danger facing the Punjab government as well?
Yes, there is. I think a lot of people in Punjab, in part of the ruling party, are ready to cross the floor also and ready to desert him. And the opposition is very tight and very well knit, and it's only about 10 or 15 seats away from forming a government. So if the Q League, which is Chaudhry Parvez Elahi, switches sides, he's currently the Speaker of the Assembly. If he switches and joins the opposition, then you can imagine that they will dethrone the current government. And I think the deal is that in that end, Chaudhry Parvez, the Speaker, will then become the Chief Minister. So that's a very big inducement to him to move on. And I think there's a very distinct possibility that as soon as Islamabad falls, they will move to fell Punjab. I think they'll also move in the KP province, where Imran has a majority. But if people are ready to desert him there, the government and the allies and the opposition can also make a determined bid to topple the government there. See, there's a problem here. The problem is that whenever in Pakistan elections have been held, unlike India, our elections are the election for the National Assembly, which is national parliament, the federal government, and the federal government, and the elections for the provincial assemblies, the four states, the four provinces, all held simultaneously, more or less on the same day. And so, therefore, in this current situation, that's not going to be possible, or at least it's going to be difficult, because Sindh, in the province of Sindh, you have Asif Zardari's PPP government. They're sitting pretty. They don't want a new election. They're happy, and they're not going to dissolve the assembly just because there's a change in Islamabad. And similarly, but in Punjab and in Islamabad, there will be a change, because this will benefit the Noon League, the Punjab, the Nawaz Sharif's party, because that's where Nawaz is very popular. So he will want his own government in Punjab before the call for a provincial election takes place, in order to consolidate or to entrench their own party interests there. Similarly in Islamabad. But nobody wants delayed elections in Islamabad. As I explained, an election which is delayed means that uh, the government that comes in next will then have to be answerable to the people for a lot of things which have happened in the past, and they won't be able to deliver. So they'll get discredited. So the sooner they get out and have a formal election, the better it will be for everybody concerned.
Absolutely. And I suppose the message is for the Indian audience that if Imran goes, and it looks increasingly likely that he will in the next 8, 9, 10 days, then his governments in Punjab and in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa will also, in all probability, go. And that means it's not just Imran that's losing power, but his party, the Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf, will also be pushed out of power.
Yes, I don't know whether that's good news or bad news for India. The fact is that a lot of people, or at least people who are opposed to Imran Khan and who have suffered at his hands because of the dismal performance, by and large lay people, they certainly want to have another go at another government and say, like, let's put our trust in people who've actually delivered in the past. You see, the allegation against the opposition is that they've all been corrupt. Nobody's ever said that they haven't delivered. Whereas in Imran Khan's case, the argument was that he hasn't delivered, but he's not corrupt. Now it's turning out that his cronies and his Punjab government and his KP government, there's been huge corruption. And I would like to predict that in the coming days, the media will finally feel free to be able to publish these stories, which were blocked for various reasons earlier. There is a lot of material out there, and a lot of it is now going to come pouring out, of corruption and misdemeanors.
So things are going to go from bad to steadily worse for Imran Khan.
Well, last point, he might, if he's able to lure these dissidents back with a nod and a wink from the establishment, and the establishment loses its neutrality for whatever reason, they might have a second thought, which is what he's trying to do. My argument is that he might survive this round, but he's incapable of providing good governance. He's in very serious trouble with his own allies, and they will ask for a more than their pound of flesh. He will not be able to deliver. So even if the vote of no confidence doesn't take off, fails this time around, there'll be another one coming in 3 months.
Najam Sethi, thank you very much indeed for this encyclopedic analysis of the situation in your country, which is clearly going to be eye-opening for everyone in India. Take care. Stay safe.
Thank you.